Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Florence Theriault here again to share with you some wonderful, wonderful dolls from an upcoming catalog, which we've entitled Fantastique. And we've taken the word from the title of one of our dolls, how it was first marketed. And that would be the Jumeau character doll from their 200 series that he named Series Fantastique. And they surely were. Now, I wanted to start this program. I always try to come up with a logical system. I think every time I think, okay, this time I'm going to be really organized and I'm going to have a script and I'm going to have a table of contents of what I'm going to do. And then I start bringing the dolls up and I said, well, wait a minute, this one relates to this one and this one relates to that one. And in the end, what I'm just doing is showing you dolls. But since I know you don't want to hear me, you just want to see the dolls anyway, let's get at it and see what we can do. Well, here is our doll that is for the namesake of the catalog, the Series Fantastique. And I'm skipping ahead to the end of the 1800s, which is, if you see the dolls behind me, would really kind of be the end of the era for those wonderful antique dolls, many of which are from the really legendary, important collection of Gail Cook of Dallas, Texas, including this being one of her examples of a Marque from her collection. This one is a very, very fascinating doll. Many of you know about the Marque itself, and I was really interested. I just found in my piles of papers an article written by a French researcher in 1986, in which it was really quite interesting to me how much really hadn't been acknowledged or celebrated about Marque at that time among collectors. There was some information that people knew, but not a lot. And curiously, a lot of it related to the Carnegie Institute in Pittsburgh that had the examples of the Marque doll that they had purchased during their original exhibition in 1915 in Paris. And so let me tell you about it. Albert Marque was a noted sculptor. And by the way, that's something else I'm going to bring up to you, and I'm going to show you several examples throughout this talk. We have not paid enough attention to specific named sculptors in French dolls. And I don't know why that is. We talk about it with German art character dolls and that type of thing, but we need to go back and somebody needs to be doing a whole research book on well-known, celebrated French sculptors and painters who dabbled or dipped into, let's call it that way, the world of dolls, either working on commission for doll makers or simply designing dolls himself. Albert Marque designed this doll. We're not sure exactly what the commission was. We think it was tied in with the Paris doll shop of Margaine Lacroix, in which the dolls were first exhibited in 1915 in costumes that had been styled by the Margaine Lacroix firm, and costumes that represented important historical periods in France, many costumes from the famous Ballet Russe, which was then very, very prominent in Paris. And what was happening in 1915? Think about it. World War I. And it was just starting to come out of it. It's just people starting to try to pull things back together. And in addition, it was really, sadly, almost the death throes of the French doll market. And so what was happening? A group of talented French artists or French doll manufacturers or French fashion designers all kind of clustered together, and they tried to figure out how can we keep these industries alive, these pivotal industries in France. And doll making was a very pivotal industry in France up until the end of the 1800s. And they came up with this exhibition, which took place at the Margaine Lacroix boutique. Albert Marque was a designer of many of the dolls that were there, the singular dolls, all of which bore his name. He was a very celebrated Parisian sculptor, had won many, many awards for his bronzes throughout Paris, and extremely well known. Now, the dolls have distinct bodies as well. They have this very, almost like a pear-shaped torso, and then very elongated, almost muscular kind of legs, with larger feet but tapered ankles. Generally the whole body of an older child, and this very, very distinctive face that some people have used is possibly identical to a sculpture he did of his younger sister some years earlier, a bronze sculpture. So That's not definitely known, but it's possibly a sculpture of his younger sister. Very unique hands and modeled for this, and in their wonderful costumes. And I want to show you this one because not until some few years ago was it discovered that a clue to how the doll is costumed might appear on the bottom of the foot. And if you can see on the bottom of the foot here, it says number 51, Dame la Révolution. So this was a woman of the French Revolution that was depicting her in her original costume from the time period of the French Revolution. Very, very wonderful. Number 51, indicating that it was 51 in the series of dolls that he did. No one seems to know exactly how many dolls were actually created. The theory has always been in the doll world that there were 100 dolls created. And in fact, to my knowledge, no one has ever found a doll with a number higher than that. The number might be lettered in ink on the back of the head or might appear on the foot. And so research continues. The doll, nevertheless, falls into the category of extremely rare. And when you can couple that with extreme artistry and just everything about it, the storyline of the doll, the attempt to save the French doll industry, its originality, and this doll that is absolutely perfect in every way, that is just gold prize as far as I'm concerned. This entire front table, by the way, and my theme for this front table are dolls in this auction, dolls in the auction, Fantastique, that are extremely rare. And I know I use the word rare a lot because many of the dolls that we will feature in our auction fall in the category of rare. Few of them are ever seen. Very few of them move into the category of being extremely rare. Extremely rare meaning you may never see another one in your collecting years, which is why I always encourage you to come to a preview of the auction. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to want it to be buy, but you need to look and see as many dolls as you can in your collecting life, because that's the joy of collecting, plus meeting friends. Now another extremely rare, wow, named for the catalog, the series Fantastique. All right, right here we have this wonderful doll. This is by Emile Jumeau. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of this doll. Emile Jumeau, and we're going to be talking a great deal about him in just a minute when we get to another part of the room, but he was a marketer. He was always looking for an angle. He was always looking for something new. And he had been known to make heads for automaton makers. And so this is what he was commissioned to do by Lambert. Lambert wanted to make not the old-fashioned kind of automatons, the big paper mache and the great big exhibition size one. Lambert decided, Leopold Lambert, automaton maker in Paris, decided that he wanted to make a series of 20-inch automatons, 20-inch from the bottom of the base to the top of the doll, that would depict children in various homey settings, childlike, realistic settings. And so for that purpose, he called Emile and he said, Emile, could you get some heads modeled for me, some samples of children's faces in various moods? And by the way, what does that sound like? Does that sound like the German art character movement some 20 years later? Pretty much, doesn't it? Well, anyway, Jumeau got to work on that. He employed artists. And again, I come back to what I was talking about a little bit before. We haven't paid enough attention to actual people in the fine art field. These are not artists that were doll modelers or doll sculptors. These were artists who needed money to supplement what they wanted to do with their life work, which is to sculpt things. And so if they would get a commission to do a head like this, they're going to go for it and earn a little money. So he commissioned from Jumeau, and Jumeau created for him a whole series of character heads, 20 of them, I believe, 19, in which children had very, very expressive faces. And they could be happy, laughing, crying, frowning, angry, startled, any number of things. They were numbered from 2 to 219, although some were created. that actually didn't have a model number on them, of which this doll is an example. But in my opinion, this is the missing model 219 that we do not have a photograph of in the Jumeau book, in which are extensive photographs of all of the items shown. 219 follows 217 and 218 that show a doll with a similar expression to this, but with variations. So 219 was registered as existing, and in 1899, when Jumeau finally gave up the ghost and sold all of their rights to SFBJ, there was an inventory done of the holdings in the Jumeau company, and there were, I believe, 7 examples of this doll remaining. Now, I say doll because when I first started talking to you, I said the heads were made as models for Lambert. But Jumeau, the guy was a marketer. He was a thinker. He was a businessman. So he said, well, I'm going to have these heads modeled anyway. Why would I just show them to Lambert to make automatons? I could make heads out of them. I could make dolls out of them. All you had to do was change the bottom of the neck socket. And so indeed, instead of a flat cut neck socket, he would have the light bulb neck socket standard on his bébés. And that's what he did. Very, very limited numbers of them were ever produced. They were, the ones that were made for automatons, by the way, were usually only in a size 4. The doll heads, actual doll heads, were larger. And this is a really wonderful example of one. As I say, only 7 existed in 1899. Very few of them still were ever made. It's believed they were only made for commission, on special commission, or for exhibition purposes. This wonderful example is wearing an original Jumeau costume. She has her original Jumeau earrings. She had an original Jumeau wig. And she is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful doll. Once again, from the Gail Cook collection, and a doll that is pure gold in every way, from her rarity to her condition to her stunning state of preservation, a wonderful quality of production, an absolutely stunning doll. Now let's move over to another Jumeau work right here, which is really quite fascinating. And this is a wonderful doll in which so little is known about this doll, about this series, of such extreme rarity that when Francois and I worked on the Jumeau book back in the 1980s, we didn't really have a lot of documentation on this. We knew it had been created about in the 1870s, when Jumeau had started to do portrait work for various automaton makers like Roulet, long before he made them for Lambert. But it was like, why? And then for a UFDC convention, I don't know how many years ago, some 10 years ago or so, it came out in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and collectors had known about this, but all of a sudden it came known for all of us to know. They had an entire collection of black dolls, with each one with a distinctly modeled face representing various cultures around the world. Some were black, some were Asian, some were Middle Eastern, and all sorts of what would have been termed an exotic culture, as opposed to the standard white complexion dolls that were made. And different also in that each was sculpted to really represent the region that it purported to be from. Not just color tones, not just painting, but the actual sculptor. And this is a very, very rare example from the series that was created for that 1878 series. Again, very, very few of these are known to exist, an item of extreme rarity. And one of the things that I always comment on when I'm cataloging, because I'm aware of this from questions that you as collectors call and ask about, well, how's the complexion? And I'm always aware if there's any like little rubs or blotches or anything like that. I will tell you unequivocally, golden, flawless. It is absolutely beautiful. It's a gorgeous color. The body is so firm and sturdy and wonderful in every way. Obviously, this doll has only ever been an exhibition piece. A very, very important doll, Jumeau, 1876 Philadelphia Exposition. Now, we have had 3 other dolls on this table that are from one of them in the actual early 1900s and 2 others from the late 1800s. And now I want to show you a few others. And I want to come to, first of all, a very, very unusual one, because we all have heard of that. Well, we haven't all heard of, but some of you who collect French poupées know the very desirable body by Clement, who was not a doll maker, a shoemaker. And Clement designed a body made of hollowed leather, just the same way he would make a shoe. He had seen the Hooray Bébés, or poupées, and he said, they're great, but the only problem with it, that material is so fragile it dries out. What if we could do the same thing, only do it with leather? I could make a mold for it, and then make it the same way I would make a shoe, only make a doll body and put the parts and then assemble them together. And he made what are commonly known as blown leather bodies, both for poupées and Hoorays and Bébés. And here is an example of a wonderful, and one of the things, if you ever came and picked it up, and there's no way to show this, unfortunately, on the camera, but one of the things that you would immediately see on this doll or feel on it is how lightweight it is, but extremely, extremely durable. And again, falling in the category of extremely rare. Well, our friend Leon Casimir Bru was another one like Jumeau. He was a doll maker, yes, but he also was an engineer in his mind. And one of the things that I've been developing in thoughts over the past few years are the difference in the I don't want to separate men and women, but there have been some differences in the doll companies that have been developed by men or by women, whereas women have tended to be probably more interested in the play aspect of the doll, its relationship to a child, and also to the fashion. And men have almost like they start out that way sometimes, and then they get really bored with it. So they decide they want to do more things that involve engineering. So they come up with all sorts of gimmicks and new contraptions and things like that. That certainly bore true of a lot of the French doll makers. By the time you get to the 1890s, they were, they were walking and key winding this and doing that. And somewhere along the line, it's almost like the doll makers had forgotten the basic function of the doll, which was a child to play with, to relate to be a companion for the child. It had become a mechanical device. That's too much of my spouting for the day, but it leads into what we have here. And these were 2 of the examples that Leon Casimir Bru did in his making of dolls. And one of them, Stuart, is always threatening that he's going to write a book on what were they thinking. And the Bébé Gourmand is the biggest example right here of a doll of what were they thinking, indeed. Leon Casimir Bru decided to make a doll that could eat a biscuit and digest it. And that would be great because the mouth is here open and you put a little biscuit in it and then the doll digests it. Oh, there is only one problem from a realism point of view. The doll swallows it and it comes out the bottom of the foot. And I don't know, each of these shoes, you can see the signature on them, and each of them you can see has a little flap on the shoe. So I'm going to take a shoe off so I can show it to you, and I'm going to show you the bottom of their foot. Instead of being a solid foot, we have a hole on the bottom of the foot. And actually, in this case, both of them have the hole on it, which isn't always the case. Sometimes only one will. But it's a very, very distinctive body. You can see the bisque molded legs all the way down. And then if you look at the little shoe, I don't know if the camera will be able to pick up the cutout at the top. It's like a little flap, and I don't want to bend it forward because these shoes are in really beautiful condition. And I'm afraid leather can dry, and I don't want it to. But there's a little flap so the biscuit could be removed from the child, the doll having digested the biscuit. And I get, once again now, raise the question, what in the Lord's name were they thinking of, giving this to a child? How could this not confuse a child? Is this how we digest our food? What's wrong with my foot? Why don't I have a hole in the bottom of my foot? But in the meantime, extremely rare doll. That may be the reason. Maybe parents decided, by the way, I just wanted to share the wig on this doll with you, because that is absolutely an extraordinary wig. She has her original label, as you've seen, on the front of her body as well. And she is just really in impeccable condition. Wonderful. I believe this to be her original costume as well. Now, Jumeau didn't stop there. He decided also that he would make not just many of his early bebés by Bru had kid bodies. That was their signature type of body. They were very, very firm and tight and really greatly done. They had bisque hands and they were wonderful bodies. But he also had a few variations, and one of them was his wooden body. He did a wooden body, and here it is. And then this one has a hidden surprise, because we're going to turn it around and you can see what appears to be some kind of a plate, a wooden plate or metal plate on its back. And you're wondering, well, what is that? And then she's going to show you, because she's going to lift her arm. So rare is this doll that we have only ever had a sale, 2 baby museums passed through our hands in 55 years, and one of the 2 was this doll, because it went into Gail Cook's collection, and now this is being sold from that collection. Extremely rare, a very, very luxury item. I don't know if it was only made on commission or if it was a standard and it just was so expensive no one made it. What was so fascinating about this doll is to me, it's a puzzle, because, okay, we have her its original key, we have the original keyhole in the back, and you wind it, and then you kind of scratch your head because you think, well, wait a minute, well, where's the music? And then you realize, no, you have to lift. You go back to his advertising and you find out. You lift her arm and the music plays. It's absolutely an extraordinary piece, and this is in most wonderful state of preservation. A very, very beautiful doll. So here you see some of the rarities that we're offering. These I all call extreme rarities in our upcoming event on July 20th, and I'm going to show you some others now.